Hi everyone, this is Divya from Quick Mommy Hacks, and today we'll talk about dyslexia in children and how parents can help their children. And for that, I have Nazneen Ebara who's going to give some tips to parents. Nazneen is a special educator and is passionate about teaching reading to young children. She holds bachelor's degree in psychology and special education, a master's degree in organization studies and a diploma in management of learning disabilities. She has taught in New Delhi, Mumbai, Ann Arbor, Palo Alto, and Bangalore. She is currently teaching the IB curriculum to grade 2 students. Her 3-year-old son keeps her busy in the happiest manner. A self confessed foodie and a voracious reader, in her free time, she is often baking or reading books. She talks about early literacy on her Instagram handle at the Reading Umbrella. Hi, Nazneen, how are you?
I'm good, Divya. How are you?
I'm good. So, thank you so much for being here to talk about dyslexia. It's great to
Me
have.
too. Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a topic very close to my heart. I'm so glad that you took up this initiative.
I will dive into my first question, which is what is dyslexia and what are the signs to look out for?
Okay. So, Divya, dyslexia predominantly is a reading, writing, spelling difficulty. I personally prefer to choose the term difficulty over disorder. I know different people have different reasons for why they call it a disorder or a difficulty. I prefer the term difficulty. So, most people will think that dyslexia is to do with letter reversals. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But actually, dyslexia, like I said, is a reading, writing, and spelling difficulty. So the breakdown can happen in any of the components of reading. So I may be a very fluent reader, but I may have major comprehension issues, and even that could be categorized as dyslexia. Or I may have severe issues with decoding text, wherein I may make letter reversals, or I may not be able to read words correctly and spell words correctly. So, predominantly, it's any difficulty in any of the components of reading. So, all the umbrella term reading, any difficulty there, it comes up under dyslexia. It's also very common, much more common than we know it to exist. Almost 1 in 5 children have dyslexia. And under the heading of learning disabilities, almost 70 to 80% will have dyslexia over other learning difficulties.
Mhm.
So it's very common. And I still feel we have a long way to go in getting the right kind of support, seeing how common it is among students.
So, what do you think are the signs to look out for?
When it comes to what are the signs that parents can look out for, I have categorized them under different headings. The first heading would be difficulties with phonological awareness. Now, usually parents are not even aware as to what is phonological awareness. So it becomes very difficult to pick up difficulties with phonological awareness. So, phonological awareness is all to do with spoken sound. It's the sound that you are hearing, how you manipulate that sound. And simple signs that parents can look out for is things like, can my child recite nursery rhymes? So I've heard nursery rhymes, they have a rhythm, they have a pattern. Can my child do that? Can the child pronounce familiar words, words that they are listening to constantly? Can they pronounce that properly? Can they identify things like sounds being manipulated? So understanding that monkey and mama both start with the sound. So, when a child has difficulty doing these simple sound based tasks, that's usually a red flag for parents to just be aware of. The second category of difficulties that parents can look for at home is when you're actually sitting down to read with your child. So let's say you have a 5 or a 6 year old, and the child is making several reversals. So the B and D confusion, the P and Q, the P and 9 confusion, the M and W. So consistently doing that, or a child who is very averse to reading. So whether you want to read out to them or you tell them to read themselves and they are very averse to it, or a child who is often losing their place while reading. So children who skip words or skip lines while reading, that's another red flag. Again, all of this should be seen consistently. It shouldn't be seen as a one-off thing. Another thing to look out for when you're reading at home is if a certain word is being pronounced and read correctly on one page, but the child is completely lost on another page. And that should tell you that the child is not actually decoding the word and reading it. It's the kid is probably doing it from memory, and once it came, and then it didn't come. The third category of difficulties that I would ask parents to look into is comprehension issues. So, not being able to identify simple things of what's happening in picture books. So, when you're reading with your child, they are not able to answer basic questions like who is this about, what's happening, where is it happening, or if they lack the ability to retell the story in the right order. So, after you've read the story, the child will often not be able to retell how the story has happened. And the fourth category of difficulties that parents can look out for is sequencing, attention, and organization issues. So, if you have a child who has a lot of difficulty learning the alphabet or the days of the week or numbers, that's usually a red flag. Or in following instructions and sticking to a routine, you will have kids who are getting very easily distracted from tasks, or you find that they are losing their things, they are not able to clear up after themselves, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing at a specific time. So even organization issues do become red flags for later diagnosis. And I would like to add here that usually parents needn't be alarmed till the child is 7 or 8. Even for a formal assessment, we usually wait till the child is at least in grade 2 or 3. So you know that enough intervention has been given before you recommend a child for formal evaluation. And a lot of times, children outgrow these patterns. So you may have a child who's making a lot of reversals and reading mistakes in kindergarten, but by the time the kid has got to grade 2, they may not show those patterns anymore.
Do you have any tips for parents for home learning?
Yes, I do. And my number one tip is don't try to replicate the school at home. If the child is receiving intervention at school, the teachers are trained professionals. As a parent, empower yourself with the knowledge, but don't try to replicate a remedial program or a reading program completely at home because it's stressful for you. You are not trained, and it becomes too much for a child. So that's my number one tip. But having said that, I know when you have a child with special needs, it's a lot of work for parents. So obviously, you will be working with your child at home. Sorry. And when you are working at home, whatever concept you are working on, it's very important to use all modalities of learning. So the same material to be presented using visual, auditory, tactile, and kinesthetic modes. So I'll take a simple example. If I am teaching my child the sound of the letter B, I will show the letter B, which is the visual. I will say B makes the sound B, which is the auditory. And tactile would be getting my child to actually draw that letter, either using Play Doh or rice or semolina. And the kinesthetic aspect would be I make a big B on the ground and I have my child trace over it or walk over it or jump over it. So the same concept, I have used different modalities to teach that. That would be my other tip. Another tip I often have for parents is think about what your end goal is and then break that task down into smaller chunks. Then start at the bottom of the ladder, starting with a small chunk, making sure that's really cemented. So, taking the same B example, I wouldn't move on to the next letter. So, my ultimate goal is my child should know 10 letters by the end of the month. But I'm going to break it up into smaller chunks. Only when the letter B has been mastered will I move to the next one. Even when I move to the next letter, I'll come back and check on B. So move in small incremental chunks is what I always advise parents to do. I also believe in a lot of positive reinforcement. So a lot of children who have learning difficulties, they start developing a negative self-esteem or a negative self-worth. And positive reinforcement should not necessarily mean things like external rewards like chocolates or TV time, but seeing the pride in your voice when you praise your child, that for me is positive reinforcement. Another tip I have for parents is to provide a lot of opportunities for your child to become the teacher. Now, I have noticed that when I teach a concept, that's when the concept is really strengthened for me. And kids love doing this. I do this in school also a lot, especially when I used to do one on one sessions. I'll tell the kid, now you are the teacher, teach this concept to me.
Mhm.
So that really works well. Another thing that parents often overlook as their kids grow older is they stop doing read alouds. If you have a child who's struggling with reading, it's so important that you keep up the read aloud so that the love for stories and books doesn't go away just because they are having a tough time reading. And my last tip is it's very important to stick to routine. So, when you have a child who is struggling, especially if they have organization issues, comprehension issues, sticking to a routine, even if it's a small chunk in the day, my routine may be just that 1 hour of reading that I'm doing with my child, but sticking to that routine really takes the pressure off for you as a parent and also for the child. And in my personal experience, I have found visual schedules to be very helpful. Visual schedule is nothing but a small card or a sheet which breaks down the tasks for the child. So there are simple visuals of what is first, but then what happens. And that's really helpful for keeping kids on task and for keeping them organized.
And as you mentioned that there's still a lot of lack in awareness about dyslexia. So what do you think are some of the myths regarding dyslexia?
So I love this question. I love debunking the myths around dyslexia. And the first myth around dyslexia that I would like to speak about is that not all children who reverse numbers and letters have dyslexia. So I even started off the session by saying this. It's one of the things to look out for, or it's one red flag. But just when you see, oh, a child is making reversals, then the term gets thrown around very loosely. Oh, probably this child has dyslexia. So that's one myth, that not everyone who reverses numbers and letters has dyslexia. My second myth, which I would love to debunk, is that dyslexia is not something that you outgrow or overcome. So very often parents have asked me, what should my child do so that they get over it? Dyslexia is a lot to do with how the brain is wired, and I don't view it as a medical issue that you can fix with my medicines and you can outgrow it. So that's something I always tell parents. It's something you can work around. The child will grow up into an adult who has found good coping strategies, but it's not something that you can outgrow, and honestly it's not something that should be viewed as something that needs to be outgrown. The third myth, and something that I hear a lot, which I feel is very unfair, is children who have dyslexia are lazy or lack motivation. In fact, it's the opposite. These are kids who are working twice as hard as other children for whom reading comes very naturally. So, to call them lazy and lacking motivation, I personally feel is very ruthless. And the fourth myth that I would like to debunk is that a lot of people believe that dyslexia and IQ are connected. Now, if you were to just do a quick Google search for people with dyslexia, they are some of the brightest people, you know. So, and I'm not going to go into their names. We all know these famous people. So, clearly, there's no connection between dyslexia and your intelligence. Because if the only way you're going to assess my intelligence is on a standardized test, I may fail, but that's not the only measure of my intelligence. And as we know, Howard Gardner's very famous theory of multiple intelligences, how can we put everything down to a paper pencil test? So, very often we hear, oh, dyslexia and IQ. There's absolutely no correlation between the two. Dyslexia is just about how the brain is wired, and that's it. And your wiring might be different from my wiring, doesn't make any of us more superior or inferior. So those are my favorite myths that I love to shatter for people, that these are not true about dyslexia.
That's actually really great to hear, and I think much needed as well. So, I mean, lastly, I just want to ask you, and because of course this initiative is to spread the awareness about dyslexia. So, in general, as an educator, what kind of advice would you give to parents who might be aware that their kids have dyslexia or who might not be, but just in general.
So my first tip is to look out for the red flags, and I've only listed a few of the red flags. I have done blog posts and everything where I've gone into way more detail, but look out for red flags at home. Look out for what your teachers are telling you. Very often, parents are in denial, and I totally get it. As a parent, I understand. Like, I have told parents that I see red flags. Please get your child assessed. Don't make this about you. So, very often as parents, we don't want to accept the reality. We don't want to get our kids as assessed for us. It's not for the child. So, my advice to parents would be, don't make this about you. Make this about your child. So, if someone is telling you that I see red flags, there is absolutely no harm in waiting it out. And once your kid is 7 or 8, get them assessed so that they can get the right kind of intervention. And the change starts with us. If we are going to stigmatize it, society will continue to stigmatize it. But if we are going to normalize it, society will normalize it. So if you have a child who has any kind of special needs, know that you're not alone. There are many parents like you across the world. Reach out, become advocates for your children, and try and remove the stigma that surrounds all of this. So that's my bit as an educator, because there are people out there who genuinely want to help your child, but we will not be able to help your child if you don't take that first step.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. No, I think it was really, really great talking to you. And those were some really great tips for all the parents. And I'm very sure it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Divya, for letting me talk about a topic that I love so much.
Well, this brings me to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Quick Mommy Hacks, and follow me on Instagram for some personal tips on pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood. Also, do leave your feedback and feel free to ask questions in the comment section below.